This is Ruth Guthrie presenting a module on sourcing, or what you've probably heard called outsourcing. A.J. Jacobs is a famous author of books where he is the actor in social experiments, like only telling the absolute truth for an entire month, think what that would be like, or posing as a beautiful woman over email for a month. In one of his books, Guinea Pig Diaries, he decided to try to outsource his life. He often had frustrating interchanges on email about office politics or interchanges with his boss where he wanted something but his boss clearly didn't want the same thing. So he advertised in India to have someone handle all of his correspondence. He hired two people, Honey and Asha. Here's a sample letter from the book. Jacobs wanted to write an article for Esquire on modern-day gold prospectors, and his boss hadn't responded, and he anticipated a negative reaction from his boss. So this is what Honey wrote for him. Mr. Granger, Jacobs had mailed you about the idea of gold prospecting. I am sure you would have received this email. It would be great if you could invest your time and patience on giving thought about his plans. Do revert and let Jacobs know about your suggestions on the same, as you know that your decision would be accepted with utmost respect. Jacobs is awaiting your response. Thank you, Honey Belani. It's a very sweet request for a response. Jacobs loved it because his boss couldn't give him a flat-out no. As the month progresses, Jacobs has Honey do more correspondence for him, handling rejections to authors submitting work to him. Jacobs felt happy that he didn't have to give the bad news directly. As the month progressed, he had Honey apologize to his wife, and he also outsourced reading a bedtime story to his child every evening over the phone. In this sense, I'm sure anything could be outsourced. Honey was very successful because she had remarkable tact, created a buffer between the correspondence, and perhaps because she wasn't so invested in the relationship or the outcome, she could give frank, meaningful feedback in a way that A.J. Jacobs could not. He very much loved his outsourcing experience. Outsourcing. According to Wikipedia, outsourcing is the contracting of an internal business process to a third-party organization. Yet outsourcing is a little misunderstood. Many companies are multinational and have organizations in other countries that hire people from there. That is known as being a multinational company, not outsourcing. McDonald's isn't going to hire Americans to work for their franchises across the globe because that doesn't make any sense. These are multinationals that hire employees in other countries because that's where those franchises are located. Classical outsourcing is more like Apple sending all of its manufacturing to China. It's also when companies hire ADP, Advanced Data Processing, to do their payroll, except ADP is an American company. Companies love to hire ADP to handle payroll because it's cheaper and they perform a better service. It's still outsourcing even though ADP is an American company. Similarly, Apple's outsourcing makes it much cheaper to make an iPhone and much cheaper for us to purchase one. A Chinese factory worker makes $2 an hour. Apple has come under a lot of scrutiny for working conditions in China. Steve Jobs was notorious for saying that Apple goes to China because there are skilled workers that he didn't have access to enough of in the United States. I think that rings a little hollow when you see how little the Chinese workers make and what the working conditions are. There are many subcategories of sourcing that scholars have come up with. 3 types of sourcing are insourcing, outsourcing, and offshoring. Insourcing is work done in-house by the company itself. Hiring the IT department to do some development work for your department is an example of insourcing. We call this business as usual. It's using your own company to perform the work, manufacturing, accounting, IT, etc. It's all done by people already employed by the firm. Outsourcing is hiring a company external to yours to perform the development or service. This would be like ADP, the example given earlier. Many companies hire ADP to handle payroll because ADP is an expert and it's all they do. Consequently, it's cheaper and has higher quality for some companies to outsource payroll. Offshoring is what we traditionally think of as outsourcing. It is the sourcing work, processes, or development of products to other countries. Onshore means it's in your own country, such as ADP. Nearshore refers to sourcing to a country that is geographically close. For us, that is Canada and Mexico. Advantages of nearshoring are that you can easily visit and communicate with the company you are sourcing to. Communication weaknesses are thought to be less than when the country is far away. Farshore refers to when the country is geographically remote from the country doing the sourcing. For us, that is China or India. If the product is digital, then the processes and products may not be too difficult to distribute between the two companies. The biggest advantage of Farshore sourcing is cheap labor. SourcingLine.com publishes a list of 4 categories ranked on a scale of 1 to 10. The categories have several sub-questions that managers answer regarding the attractiveness of other countries for outsourcing business processes. The country with the highest ranking is India. It has an overall score of 7.1, cost competitiveness is rated at 8.3, the skill index is 6, and the economic environment is rated 4.2. Indonesia is quite similar, except in skills index they are rated 4.3. Singapore is rated a whopping 9.4 in its economic environment index. SourceLine also reports that Singapore is attractive as a sourcing nation because the quality of what is produced, the infrastructure, and its proximity to Asian markets. If a company is considering outsourcing, here are a few reasons why they might decide to do it. Cost. In 2004, Jordan reported statistics of the average wage in the United States compared to China and India. A range of salary was reported in the United States from $60,000 to $90,000. In China, it was $5,000 to $9,000, while in India, it was $6,000 to $10,000. So you can see it's distinctly cheaper to pay offshore labor. With a sourced company, there's no burden cost for healthcare or retirement either, so the savings in cost can be very large. If a project takes a turn for the worse, it may be easier to fire outsourced employees than those employed directly by the company. There's no severance pay. The sourcing company would, of course, have to stick to the contractual terms negotiated at the beginning of the work. Outsourcing can also provide skills that a company might not have. If a company wishes to go big in 3D movie development but cannot find enough programmers, technicians, and graphic artists to make Toy Story 10, they might outsource that work to a country that has a labor force ready to go. This might give them a high-quality product with a shorter time to market. Another advantage of outsourcing is that it can free companies' resources to focus on key business areas. For example, if a company's key function is the production of new pharmaceuticals, they may be willing to outsource the manufacturing and keep the research and development in-house. After the drugs are developed and approved, the company can let go of that initiative and focus more closely on research and development of future products. Companies need to seriously consider what they are willing to give up and what they strategically need to hang on to as their core business area. It may also be advantageous to outsource in terms of payment of taxes. Firms that outsource to other countries pay taxes in those countries and then get a tax credit from the United States. Tax rates are typically lower in other countries too. Ireland's corporate tax rate is 12.5%, compared to the United States at 39.5%. What to outsource or offshore? If you ask our author, A.J. Jacobs, what can be outsourced, he would tell you everything. In business, the top things that companies tend to outsource are call center, data center, software development, engineering services, healthcare services, financial services, and research and analysis. Something like a call center is easy to outsource. It can give a company skilled workers at very low cost and enable them to have a 24/7 call center. Activities like data entry and form processing, transactional types of functions, are good for sourcing because there's not a great deal of complexity in what is required. However, these jobs are at risk of being automated by self-service. The outsourcing decision matrix is a tool to determine what types of business functions should be outsourced. The y-axis lists strategic importance from low to high. The x-axis shows contribution to operational performance, strategic versus operational. If an activity is of low strategic importance and doesn't contribute to operational performance either, why do it? These are things a company should consider simply eliminating. If an activity is of high strategic importance and low operational performance, Perhaps it is a function that could offer an advantage by forming a strategic alliance or re-engineering the activity to be of higher operational performance. Aftermarket sales is an example of this. Having another company that could sell extended warranties to existing customers may boost sales and customer satisfaction in an area that the company is not entirely staffed to cover. If an activity is high in both strategic relevance and operational performance, it might be best to retain that activity because it's something that the company does well and needs to keep their strategic advantage in. It is a key business function that gives the company identity and makes it profitable. Sharing that type of activity reduces a company's strategic edge. Lastly, something that is low in strategic importance and high in operational performance may be an opportunity for outsourcing. Help desk is a great example of this. The strategic advantage of help desk is low. While the company wants to provide excellent service to support their customers, phone help isn't going to create a massive strategic advantage in selling new products or services. Hiring out help desk services to someone with proved performance that can have a great call closure rate at low cost is a way to save money and potentially improve quality. Problems with outsourcing include contract management, switching costs, outsourcing efforts may not be supported internally by your in-house employees, you may have less control over quality, communication issues may come up, complexity might result in longer delivery times, it could be a threat to competitive advantage, and you could lose confidentiality. Counterwave outsourcing. Of course, not everyone has a successful outsourcing experience. Sometimes outsourced projects are failures or do not meet the expectations of the sourcing company. The current trend, in fact, is away from so many sourcing contracts. This is termed counterwave outsourcing or reshoring. Several U.S. companies found that their supply chains were very complex and that outsourcing did not offer advantages in getting products to market more quickly. Firms also found that jobs they originally outsourced became obsolete and were eliminated, thus eliminating the outsourcing contract. There's sometimes a dissatisfaction with the quality of products produced and with the communication between companies in developing products and services. It requires skilled managers that know how to communicate and manage sourced projects. In a 2005 survey from Deloitte Consulting, 25% of firms with outsourcing strategies had reversed their decisions to outsource. That's a pretty big number. Green sourcing. The last sourcing topic is a new buzzword in business. It hasn't existed for all that long. Green sourcing refers to reducing costs by emphasizing local sources for products. You've probably eaten at a restaurant locally that used food sources from local farmers. It's more environmentally green because the food didn't have to travel by truck or boat a long distance to get on your plate. It has a smaller carbon footprint. However, not everything shipped locally is cheaper than purchasing it from another country. Terms like sustainable procurement and sustainable supply chain are emerging in business literature. The shift to cloud-based storage and software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service is very much a green sourcing example. Nicely, green sourcing and companies seeking to do this often saves money and builds a positive public image for the company. Quiz time! What country has the highest rating as an outsourcing supplier? India at 7.1. Indonesia is the second country at 6.7. Name 3 reasons to adopt an outsourcing strategy. Cost savings, gaining expertise, and flexibility. What is the primary reason you might not outsource? Loss of strategic advantage. Of course, you wouldn't outsource your key business area. That's the end.